No one can keep a secret forever. Rick and Patty Jo Pulley are the beacons of faith in their community.
They're not just married to each other, they're married to the Lord. And that gives them a very different foundation than a couple who's just married to one another till death do us part.
But behind this couple's devotion to God lies a dark sin that will shatter their world.
You're holding so many secrets so close to your chest that you can't tell anyone because you can't let it out.
Dangerous fetishes, infidelities, and secrets that will tear apart anyone who gets close to the truth.
People are able to hide things from other people many times, but they ultimately cannot hide what they've done from God.
Soon, every dirty little secret will be revealed. It's 1999 in Southern Virginia, and Rick and Patty Jo Pulley have made a full life in the rolling green hills of tobacco country as a devoted Christian couple.
They connected to one another around God and their belief. They were really just the ideal of what you would expect in a Christian couple.
Rick is an ordained minister and a pastor at a small local church.
Rick Pulley is the kind of person the parents respected for his values and his calm demeanor and his friendliness, and somebody that the children could relate to, and somebody that everybody really trusted and trusted his judgment.
Rick's wife, Patty Jo, is deeply involved in the church's work as well and leads the community's music program.
She was very instrumental in the ministry of the church, and that's where she really focused her time.
Patty Jo could play just about every instrument. Patty Jo could sing. She had a remarkable voice. She had so much talent.
She was very beautiful at playing the piano. They said that she could bring tears to your eyes playing the piano.
I just reflect, and you reflect into my soul, and
Rick and Patty Jo have chosen a spiritual path in life and devote themselves to the ministry and sharing their faith.
The two of them together wanted to help people. That was their mission. That's what they wanted to do. That's what they were all about, was helping people.
They would go on a lot of missionary trips through the church to help the needy, spread the word of the gospel.
But in setting aside worldly pursuits, they also struggle financially, and Patty Jo takes on cleaning work to help support them.
You had Patty Jo working cleaning houses, made $90 a week. She's doing everything she can.
She was a loving wife, a loving daughter, nice Christian lady who's very, very dedicated to her church and to her church family. Was a homemaker for her husband.
As true life partners, Rick and Patty Jo believe their marriage is part of their spiritual journey on earth.
They're not just married to each other, they're married to the Lord. And so there's three in this relationship. The relationship is a triangle. And that gives them a very different foundation than a couple who's just married to one another till death do us part.
It was a picture-perfect marriage. That they sang together in church, that they sat hand in hand, side by side.
For Rick and Patty Jo, their whole lives are dedicated to their faith. There are regular church services, but from the moment they get up until the end of the day, they make themselves available, organizing missions and counseling teenagers and young adults.
your faith will not let you down.
Their door is always open.
People used to love to hang out with them, that's what I've been told. People would love to come over and spend the summers with them and things of that nature.
Rick and Patty Jo have a special commitment to their youth ministry. They believe they can make a deep impact with young people who may be struggling with their faith. They've even taken students into their home when church members have asked for their mentorship.
I think they took their ministry to heart, and they thought that they were doing God's work by opening their home and providing a roof and a bed and solace to perhaps someone who may be young, wayward, troubled, in need of direction or shelter.
He's there to guide the young people. He's there to lead them, to be this role model to them. The community has given him this strong position of trust, and you put your kids with this man, and there was a huge expectation that he was leading them in the right direction.
Rick and Patty Jo are living a life of faith, of helping others in need, and raising the next generation of church leaders. To many around them, they are the perfect Christian couple. But on May 14th, 1999, Rick's world is suddenly broken apart by a shocking event. When Rick returns home from a community play that night, he expects Patty Jo to be home. But she is nowhere to be found. It's completely unlike Patty Jo to be late. As the hours tick by, Rick becomes frantic and calls the police.
He said he came home. He made the first call a little bit after 12 to the sheriff's office. He was upset. I asked him, would she ever leave him? He said no, she would never leave me.
By morning of the next day, there's still no sign of Patty Jo.
Patty Jo's missing.
Rick reaches out to members of the church, but nobody has any idea where his wife could be.
When's the last time you saw her? Was she okay?
Yeah, we had dinner
The congregation is worried. Patty Jo is not someone who would just walk away from her life. They believe her love for Rick is deep, and her commitment to doing God's work is unwavering.
At one point in time, we were asked, do you think Patty Jo would run off? No way. Absolutely not. Didn't happen. And we knew that without a doubt.
Soon, the people who know her best start to have terrible fears about what might have happened.
I kept thinking, who would kidnap Patty Jo? Who would take Patty Jo? Has someone raped her and left her somewhere for dead? Who would do this to Patty Jo?
2 days after Patty Jo's disappearance, police have no leads. No unidentified victims have come into the hospital. Her credit cards or bank account has not been used. It seems as if she has simply vanished. Rick appears despondent. Patty Jo is at the center of every part of his life. Her loss is unimaginable. And the community is filled with questions. Where has Patty Jo gone? Has she been abducted? And is Patty Jo Pulley even still alive? Coming up, as investigators look deeper into Patty Jo's disappearance, a strange call makes them question everything they thought they knew about the Christian couple.
The phone call that came in, a male voice, and it was trying to be disguised. And it said that Patty Jo was having an affair.
Minister Rick Pulley and his wife Patty Jo are spiritual and community leaders at their small-town Virginia church. But Patty Jo has suddenly vanished without a trace. Police have fast-tracked the case. Even though it has been less than 24 hours, Patty Jo is officially a missing person.
How do you know she's not in the hospital?
Both Patty Jo's husband and her church are growing more and more concerned that she may have suffered a terrible misfortune.
At this point, he's already traced back her steps where where she could have been. At this point, he's frantic. She's missing.
I'm just keeping the faith that she's all right.
Just a day after Patty Jo's disappearance, police get their first solid lead. The pickup truck that Patty Jo had been driving is found not far from her home. It looks as if someone simply parked the truck and walked away.
The truck was found with the windows up, the doors locked. And once I heard that, I thought to myself, now, who on earth kidnaps somebody, takes the truck and parks it on the side of the road and locks the doors?
There was nothing about that truck that showed any signs of foul play or anything that would make it stand out.
But the truck does provide a valuable piece of evidence to police.
The seat was all the way back. There's no possible way that Patty Jo Pulley could have been driving that truck and had parked that truck the way that it was parked.
Patty Jo stands only 5 feet 7 inches tall. She certainly wouldn't have needed the seat in the truck pushed back if she was driving. It seems likely that a man was driving Patty Jo's truck, but who? It couldn't have been her husband, Rick. He was seen by witnesses at a community play when Patty Jo vanished. Police quickly eliminate him as a suspect, but they wonder, could this unknown man be a friend or even a lover?
In this community, this religious community, where infidelity has to be frowned upon to a far greater degree, I think it was actually more plausible that if she was carrying on with somebody else, that she would have just picked up and left.
That possibility becomes more credible when a local mechanic, Robert Rowland, says that he encountered a man on the road where Patty Jo's truck was found on the night of her disappearance.
Robert Rowland said, you know, that must be that guy's truck because it's parked on the other side of the road. He must be broke down. And so he pulls up to him and says, hey, do you need a ride? I see that your truck's broke down.
You need a ride? Are you okay?
He turns his head quickly away from him as if he's trying to avoid him, saying, no, I got it, everything's fine.
But this was a brief encounter on a dimly lit road, and the mechanic can't offer more than a general description: a large man with dark hair. It could be anyone. Police have followed the little physical evidence available to them, and it's led to a dead end. Detectives decide to re-interview Rick Pulley to see if anything in the timeline of Patty Jo's disappearance might yield a new clue.
Lately, did you argue recently?
No, not at all. We're like I said, we're a happily married couple.
Rick had previously told them that he had no idea why Patty Jo would go missing. But weeks have passed, and he finally tells police more. Rick admits that despite appearances, behind closed doors, his marriage has not always been perfect.
It's possible that Rick didn't want the police to know the details of their private life and tried to stave them off, hoping that it could remain a private matter and she would return home. But the longer the time went that she stayed missing, the more he may have felt that he wanted to let police in so they could help find Patty Jo.
Rick makes an intimate disclosure to police. He suffers from sexual dysfunction, something that has caused conflict in his marriage with Patty Jo. And he also admits that 5 years ago, he had sinned with another woman.
Absolutely nobody really knows what goes on in a marriage other than the husband and the wife. And I think it's very simple, in fact, for a husband and wife to give the appearance of having a very solid, happy marriage, when in fact, behind closed doors, it is not the case at all.
But Rick is also adamant that his affair is long over and that the couple has put it past them.
He said that when it came to light, he confessed it to Patty Jo. She forgave him, and they went on with the ministry. Even though she may forgive him, she doesn't forget. So that's still there.
Patty Jo could have thought to herself, Rick will forgive me for this. He's done it. He would have no right not to. And we are forgiving people. We are Christian people. So she could have been motivated by those ideas and may have had a less than appropriate relationship.
Rick also tells police that 2 weeks before Patty Jo's disappearance, he'd received a very strange phone call.
You ought to know what she's been doing behind your back.
The phone call that came in, Rick said it was a male voice, and it was trying to be disguised. And it said that Patty Jo, your wife, was having an affair.
Even people of the cloth, pious people, even very, very moral people can make mistakes. So it is possible that she might have had a very weak moment and ran with it.
Pastor Rick Pulley has finally given police some understanding of why his wife Patty Jo may have willingly left him. But if Patty Jo had a boyfriend, it was a very closely held secret, and no one who knew her can give the police any more information. Detectives also must consider the possibility that Patty Jo was abducted or attacked. But if she was, there is no physical evidence that can lead them to a suspect. The investigation has come to a standstill. But then, in the days and weeks after Patty Jo's disappearance, hope for her return is revived. Police receive multiple reports that she has been spotted in various nearby towns.
Some people are seeing her alive. I know the investigators were getting reports of they saw Patty Jo somewhere. We went through that a couple of times. And never, nothing.
Despite numerous sightings, police are never able to locate Patty Jo. None of the reports pan out. But with the call that suggested Patty Jo's affair and the multiple sightings, evidence is building that perhaps Patty Jo is alive and has left Rick for another man.
Lots of missing people went missing because they wanted to go away. Patty Jo could easily have run away. Perhaps she ran off with a love, or she ran away to another town or country or another life.
Under the cloud of his wife's disappearance, Rick Pulley has reluctantly revealed some of the couple's secrets. But there are much darker things still hidden. Coming up, there's someone who knows much more about the Pulley's secrets.
Whenever you bring someone new into your life that you get to know in an intimate way, there is always the potential for disaster.
Patty Jo Pulley, the wife of small-town minister Rick Pulley, has been missing for several weeks. Shortly after Patty Jo's disappearance, her husband tells police that because of troubles in their marriage, he believes it's possible Patty Jo has simply left him for a new love.
Maybe that's exactly what happened. Maybe Rick is right. That's why she's gone. That's why she's incommunicado. There really isn't anything nefarious going on other than her affair.
As the days pass with no new leads and no word from Patty Jo, her loved ones become more and more desperate for answers. They know the longer that Patty Jo is missing, the colder the trail to finding her grows.
I could not sleep. It was just a constant thought of where is she? Every time the phone would ring, we would just jump. It's almost like being a prisoner in your own home.
Patty Jo's niece searches for answers, and she makes a very odd discovery. While looking at a website connected to Rick and Patty Jo's church, she sees a picture of a woman currently on a mission to Romania. Almost unbelievably, the woman looks exactly like Patty Jo.
The resemblance to Patty Jo just, it shocked me. So I said, okay, something's got to be done with this picture. There's such a resemblance.
Could Patty Jo have gone off on a mission to Romania? And if so, why wouldn't she have told anyone? Why would it be such a closely held secret? Patty Jo's niece brings the website photo to the attention of the authorities.
They checked the picture, compared it to a picture of Patty Jo, and said that there was a 99% chance that it could be her in that picture.
Who that is? It's her. How could it be her?
There's faith, there is hope.
The members of Patty Jo's church say they have no knowledge of Patty Jo being in Romania on a mission. Police decide to dig deeper into the Pulley's religious community, looking for clues.
I was looking for people that were very close. Who would be on the inside? Not from the outside, but who was actually close to them.
Investigators are told about a young man who had once lived with Rick and Patty Jo. But when they try to track him down for questioning, they discover he has suddenly left the country. Although he is scheduled to start studying medicine in college, the former house guest of the police decides to defer his education and go on a mission.
That didn't really make sense, that you're getting through college and you're looking to go into the medical field, so you should be getting ready to go into a medical college and then decide, well, I'm going to go into missionary work. That didn't quite seem right.
Even more suggestive is where the young man has supposedly gone, Macedonia, a country not far from Romania, where Patty Jo is suspected to be. Everyone wants to know what the relationship between this young man and Patty Jo truly is.
I immediately thought about him being in Macedonia. I said, maybe he's not in Macedonia. Maybe he's in Romania with Patty Jo.
And law enforcement is also aware that there is a specific reason why Macedonia may be attractive to some. It is one of the few countries that has no extradition treaty with the United States.
There have been some fairly significant homicides where people have fled to Macedonia, and the fact that they don't have an extradition treaty has become a big issue. Flight is always something that the police consider to be very significant.
And I'm thinking, what is he going over there for? Is he just trying to get away from this whole situation? Is he running?
Investigators are convinced this young man is the key to discovering what happened to Patty Jo Pulley. Does he know where she is? And why did he leave the country so suddenly after Patty Jo vanished?
We flew to Macedonia to try to interview him. We felt like it was something he knew that we really needed.
But when investigators arrive in Macedonia, they are told he is not there. He has slipped away to Romania, the very same place the picture on the website suggested Patty Jo might be.
Was she having an affair with him and ran off with him? Did he do something to her? But it's easy to look at the young man and wonder, how did that play a role in her disappearance?
Investigators try to track the young man down for months, but with no success. Finally, a full year and a half after Patty Jo's disappearance, they get a break. The young man voluntarily returns to the U.S., and when investigators question him, he has a very compelling story to tell.
We know you know the Pulleys real well, so we're hoping you can shed a little light on the situation.
He says he doesn't know where Patty Jo Pulley is, but he doubts she would have ever gone off on a mission without telling anyone. He says he and Patty Jo weren't romantically involved, and he doesn't believe she was having an affair with anyone else. Her Christian values simply wouldn't permit it. But he also tells police something else. Rick Pulley was not always the good pastor he made himself out to be. He says Rick has it in him to be petty, vengeful, and nasty, and he directed much of his cruelty towards Patty Jo.
Is there something you'd like to tell me?
The thing that came out of his interview that was very, very important to me is every time I talk to Rick or question Rick.
Haven't seen her since then.
I haven't seen her since.
Rick was very meek, very humble, very mild-mannered.
Have you had any leads?
Never raised his voice, really never show emotion. But there's another side to Rick that he can be very mean.
What are you talking about?
If he had issues with you, this was a side of Rick that he saw that no one else saw because he spent a lot of time over there.
He was one person with us. He was another person when he left us.
Why are you pestering me about it?
And Patty Jo never told us anything.
The young man is cleared as a suspect, but police begin to consider something that once seemed so implausible. Could the distraught husband and man of God actually be the one responsible for his wife's disappearance?
I started questioning Rick. Could he have had something to do with Patty Jo disappearing. And I brought it to my grandparents' attention, and they didn't want to hear it. No, you're wrong. Rick had nothing to do with this.
Law enforcement takes a harder look at the man who seemed so devastated when Patty Jo originally went missing, who disclosed an unsatisfactory sex life with his wife, who even admitted to a past affair of his own. The revelation that he was not the mild-mannered pastor that he presented to the community is changing the nature of the investigation. Could he be keeping even darker secrets?
Somebody who's living a double life, somebody who's living a lie and has a serious vested interest in keeping their secret life secret, like a pastor of a church who's engaging in illicit sex. They may be willing to go to any lengths not to get caught, to protect that secret and to protect their public face.
Even though there is still no evidence connecting Rick Pulley to a crime, years after his wife's disappearance, Rick Pulley is becoming a person of interest in the case. But it's difficult for investigators to proceed.
I couldn't really get a search warrant because I didn't have a crime. You gotta have a crime to get a search warrant. A missing person's not a crime.
Coming up, what really happened to Patty Jo is still a secret, but not for long.
My foot stepped on something and I heard a crack. And so I looked down. When I finally realized what I was probably looking at, I realized it was pretty serious.
Three years have passed, and Patty Jo Pulley is still missing.
Please find my wife.
I will do everything I can.
Police suspect that her husband, well-regarded pastor Rick Pulley, was somehow involved, although it's still hard for many to believe.
They're thinking it can't be him. They're thinking, how could it be him? But in a case like this, where you have this seemingly model Christian couple, it's almost like suspecting Ken of killing Barbie.
Police now know more about the couple's troubled marriage and Pulley's character. But it's still possible that Patty Jo has left her marriage and her old life of her own free will. Then, 3.5 years after her disappearance, a truly terrible discovery is made. While surveying a riverbank just miles from where Patty Jo's truck had been abandoned, a civil engineer comes across a chilling sight.
My foot stepped on something and I heard a crack. And so I looked down and I see bones out here. I see deer bones. I see other things in the places where we work, but I've never seen a bra stretched across the bones.
Police are called out to the wooded area, and they're able to confirm that the remains of a human being have been uncovered in this remote spot.
There were signs of jewelry, so we did assume that it was a female. It appeared that one of the skeletal hands had been bound, which, led us to believe of foul play. We found a rope that may have been used to restrain someone, or maybe have even used to kill someone.
The remains are sent to the coroner for tests. Dental records confirm a match. This is Patty Jo Pulley.
They compared the dental records. It was Patty Jo. It was her remains.
While it is impossible to determine the exact time of death, these bones have been here a long time. Very likely Patty Jo was killed around the time she went missing. Maybe even the very day her husband reported her gone. There is no longer any doubt Patty Jo was brutally murdered.
Once she was found, all the other leads, as far as people would call it, I saw her eating at Hardee's today, or she's in Romania, or wherever, everything at that point dissolves because you know she's here. There's nowhere she could be anywhere else other than where she was found.
First thing that law enforcement's going to do when a case switches from missing person to homicide is go back over all of the evidence that was gathered to try to find the person. And they're going to look at all the evidence in a new light, trying to find who they want to see through the lens of suspect.
We really got to work on re-interviewing people.
The first person investigators speak with is Rick Pulley. As Patty Jo's surviving husband, police need to inform him of the terrible discovery of Patty Jo's remains. But Rick's reaction to this devastating news is strange.
The main thing that we were interested about was his demeanor. There was no, thank God, you know, where is she? You know, what happened to her? Nothing.
Police have long suspected Rick's involvement in his wife's disappearance, but they had no forensic evidence tying him to violence of any kind, much less a brutal murder.
You find faith.
Rick Pulley is beloved in his community, but now police know much more about Rick Pulley's character, and it's hardly what one would expect from a man of God. Police decide to re-interview previous witnesses, looking for information that may have been overlooked the first time around.
I knew at that particular time we would have to go back and do more investigating and you know, dot all the I's and cross all the T's before we made this arrest.
On top of their list is Robert Rowland, the local mechanic who witnessed a mysterious man walking on the road near Patty Jo's truck on the night of her disappearance.
You break down? You need a ride? You okay?
Rick Pulley was not a suspect at the time, but now, after seeing police photographs, Robert Rowland says that he's 100% sure the man he saw was Rick. Police now have a witness that places Rick Pulley at the scene of Patty Jo's disappearance. Investigators decide their next step is to dig deeper into Rick's personal and financial records. They know a paper trail often leads where people's deepest secrets can be found.
He had 2 credit cards that were overdue that he hadn't paid. Had a dentist bill that was overdue.
You're bankrupting us. We have no money.
So it showed a different picture that everything was not as wonderful as it appeared to be or was portrayed to be. But we actually have a couple here that are in serious financial difficulty.
It came out in the investigation as far as financial problems. It came out as far as maybe not having the marriage that was perceived by everybody.
I am not doing one thing wrong.
Rick and Patty Jo did not live an extravagant lifestyle, and Patty Jo even took on extra work to give them a larger financial cushion. Why couldn't they afford to pay their bills? Had Rick started up another affair? And was he spending money on a new lover? Or was it a different kind of secret entirely?
There's stuff going on in marriages that no one knows about. And I believe finances is one of those areas that can cause a lot of stress in a relationship and wouldn't be apparent to the average person.
If the Pulleys were under financial strain, investigators believe there must have been something unscrupulous behind it. People's guilty pleasures and obsessions are often ones that they pay most dearly for.
Patty Jo never told us anything. We never saw signs of anything going on between the two of them. She kept everything to herself. And it's because she had been put up on a pedestal and this couldn't fail. Her marriage couldn't fail.
Coming up, police are about to discover that the devout minister had a secret.
Did you miss me?
That no one who knew him could ever have imagined. After the remains of Patty Jo Pulley are found, a witness has identified Pastor Rick Pulley as the man he saw near the site of her disappearance nearly 4 years before. Was it possible this man of God had killed his wife? New clues point in that direction. When re-examining all the evidence in the case file, detectives come across photos of Rick taken during the first days of the investigation.
First thing I saw, I noticed some scratches on his face. It was on the left side of his face.
At that time, Rick had an easy explanation for the marks on his face.
I must have ran through a briar bush.
He said he fell in the briars, and that's how he got the scratches on his face, was when he slipped and fell into the briars looking for his dog.
In the days immediately after his wife's disappearance, the soft-spoken pastor was not considered a suspect in the case. And Patty Jo was a missing person, not a murder victim. But with it now clear that Patty Jo was violently murdered, those scratches look very, very bad for Rick.
When I saw the photographs of him back then after disappearance, I could tell you that those did not come from briars.
Police send the photographs of the scratches out to a local forensic pathologist who states that the scratches could have been made by human fingernails. Whatever doubts investigators have about Rick Pulley's guilt are quickly fading. They think they have stumbled upon physical clues that the minister killed his wife.
You know, Patty Jo Pulley told us who killed her by the marks that she left on her husband.
But investigators need more evidence if they are going to convict Rick Pulley. They can't go into court with an expert theory about photographs that are 3 years old. Then, going through the couple's bank records and phone bills, they find something odd. A call to one number over and over again, numerous times a week, with charges totaling nearly $1,000 in a single month.
We began looking back at the numbers of why it would cost this much. Because it was a sex hotline. Rick had an obsession with making phone sex calls.
Hello?
Hello, baby.
It's been a while since I've heard your voice.
He had a fetish with the 1-900 numbers. He really liked to call those girls.
Did you miss me?
You're my little secret. What are you wearing right now?
Rick had been running up massive phone bills by calling sex talk lines.
Tight, black, leather miniskirt. I have nothing on underneath.
Oh, girl. You are a naughty thing, ain't you?
The well-respected pastor was addicted to a fantasy world where he paid real money at exorbitant rates.
I knew you would like it.
To hear a woman fulfill his fantasies.
You know I like it when you take control.
Very naughty.
He doesn't have a lot of self-esteem, and the phone sex is giving him the self-esteem that he doesn't have because he can pretend that he is this really desirable player-type guy via the phone sex, and that's what he's doing.
Money is not an object here. I want you to know that.
Police determine that Rick Pulley is addicted to phone sex. It's hardly the kind of secret a religious leader could ever want people to know. But police think his wife, Patty Jo, did know. And the thousands of dollars Rick was spending on the phone sex
Can I meet you?
was bankrupting their household.
He could call them 1-900 numbers, do all that stuff for himself, and she could work as hard as she's working. She's got to go, do things to make ends meet.
What money they had, they would get into arguments over it because Patty Jo didn't like the way he was spending it.
This is going to be something special.
He's got a sex problem and wanted to call these sex lines on the telephone.
He had deceived everyone. He was counseling people to do good, but he was living with a lie the whole time.
Police soon learned that Rick was also running up debt on church credit cards, perhaps due to his sex calls. It's obvious that this fetish and what Rick had spent on it would be a massive scandal in their church and their community if it got out. Rick's motive for murder becomes abundantly clear.
He's an important member of this church. It matters. He cannot do this. So he knows he can't do it, but he can't control it.
Rick stood to lose everything. His church, his followers, and most importantly, his Christian image, if Patty Jo revealed his secret.
The secret she knew about Rick, his behavior, his habits. And if she'd ever talked it, it would destroy him in the church community. And that's all he basically had and lived for, was the little church community.
It would have been so humiliating for him. He couldn't have lived with that. There's no way. So he had to silence her. Rick was willing to kill his life partner, to protect himself.
Investigators learned that the day before her disappearance, Patty Jo had bounced a check. It seems possible that this small incident could have triggered a deadly argument between the two.
Is there a confession you would like to make? I saw the latest phone bill.
That check, that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. It bounced. I think she came home, they got into a heated argument, and I think she had made up her mind that she was going to leave him. And that started the chain of events that caused her death.
It matters to me.
I believe that it really got out of control really quick.
What do you mean you don't have any money? What are you talking about?
I know Rick needed to kill Patty Jo to keep her from telling her family and others about him and the person he was behind closed doors.
Nearly 4 years after Patty Jo's death, police believe they can finally piece together what happened. Most likely, Patty Jo confronted Rick over his phone sex addiction. She may have threatened to expose his secret and shame him in their church community if he didn't stop. Police believe that when their argument got out of control, Rick strangled Patty Jo. After dumping Patty Jo's body, Rick abandoned her truck at the side of the road and walked home, encountering mechanic Robert Rowland. It would be over 3 years before Patty Jo's bones would be discovered by a civil engineer. The district attorney takes this theory to a jury, along with the mechanic's testimony that Rick was the man he saw on the road that night. After only 2.5 hours of deliberation, they find Rick Pulley guilty of murder. He is sentenced to life in prison.
The only tears I saw Rick Pulley shed were the day that he was convicted. Not one time did I see that man show any remorse.
Rick Pulley killed his wife to cover up his secret phone sex addiction. And he almost got away with it.
If Patty Jo Pulley's remains had not been found, this case would still be open. It would still be a missing person report case. All the boxes of evidence and everything I had would still be sitting in a room up there, locked up.
Those who loved Patty Jo will have to live with her senseless loss. And all for the sins of a man of the church.
People are able to hide things from other people many times, but they ultimately cannot hide what they've done from God.
He wasn't a person whose values were the community's values, and his morality was not the morality that they practiced.
People say I'll go to my grave with that secret. But sometimes what they do is send another to their grave with that secret.
Rick had a mask on for so many years, and he took that mask off, and when he did, we saw the real Rick. And it wasn't a pretty sight.